There are many different types of games. There's strategy games, puzzles, simulators, first-person shooters, but today I will be focusing on story-driven games, and specifically on how to tell a good story in a game. I will provide examples using multiple games, followed by a close analysis of Cyberpunk 2077. One element to make a good story is the game's form. Chris Crawford categorized these forms as the following. Closed. This means that the game is complete and self-sufficient as a structure. Formal. This means that the game has explicit rules. System. A game's collection of parts which interact with each other, often in complex ways. Subjectively represents. The idea that games are objectively unreal, meaning that they do not physically recreate the situations they represent in real life, but they are subjectively real to the player. Choosing a specific game form could make it simpler to focus on the type of story that could fit it best. In a system game, such as L.A. Noire, the game's different parts interact with each other to tell a story. In this game, you play as a detective trying to figure out what happened in different crime scenes. The game's parts, such as finding clues and controlling your conversations with witnesses, interact with one another and work together to allow the player to uncover the mystery, telling a story. There are also different types of narratives to choose from to tell a story. There's what Huoxin Wei describes as embedded narratives. These are scripted narrative elements that are embedded throughout the game to form the background story. This narrative includes games that contain multiple endings. Examples of this type of narrative are games like The Last of Us, Life is Strange, and Uncharted. There's also what Eilert and Lochart call emergent narratives. Here, players participate in the narrative process in a real-time environment where authorial activities are minimized. An example of this is a game like Minecraft. A game developer could choose what type of game and narrative they would like the player to experience. Do they want a defined story with a clear start, beginning, and end, or do they want the player to create their own story? With these game and narrative forms in mind, a game developer could focus on making the story and the type of gameplay fit together harmoniously. A game developer could also choose to include cutscenes in the game to aid the storytelling process by establishing a dialogue between the actions of the player and the voice of the narrator. However, academics like Paul Cheng bring up some concerns surrounding cutscenes. Having a good story does not mean that one should sacrifice gameplay. Cutscenes can be regarded as passive and non-interactive, which goes against the interactive nature of gameplay. Narrative reliance on cutscenes and other out-of-game devices is one of the main reasons why the narrative dimension is often seen as essentially opposed to that of gameplay. Cutscenes are often considered problematic because they prevent the player from doing anything and are in a sense a non-game element in a game. A cutscene is passive and makes it impossible for a player to interact or intervene with the story, negatively impacting the gameplay. A way around this would be to include interactive cutscenes. For example, in Cyberpunk 2077, the player can choose dialogue-specific options, so they have to pay attention. Dialogue option can sometimes change the outcome of what will happen later on in the game. There are also moments in which the player has to pick a dialogue option quickly, therefore transforming typically passive and non-interactive mechanic into an interactive and engaging one. This is to prevent what Clint Hawking calls ludonarrative dissonance. This is when there's a disconnect between the game's mechanical interactions and the story told by the game's narrative interaction. Simply put, sometimes the story and the gameplay don't work together well and can sometimes even contradict each other. This can impact the quality and value of the story in a game. Cyberpunk is a system game. Different parts of the game work together in the gameplay. At first, you can choose your path: Nomad, Street Kid, or Corpo. These options make different dialogue options available in the game. Further on, you can choose to customize your character to have different features, such as arms that make you stronger, legs that make you jump higher, and other features that give your character a longer lifespan and make them better at combat. Instead of making your character stronger, you could also choose to make them better at hacking instead. These two options would drastically change your style of gameplay. Furthermore, the game follows an embedded narrative, but it has many different ending options depending on the choices you make in the game. There are cutscenes, but like mentioned previously, these are interactive and immersive, allowing the player to feel like they're almost inside the game. There's no ludonarrative dissonance. The player can mix these different factors to choose what kind of story they want to play, and make the game feel more personal and immersive to them by making their character feel like their own. Ultimately, this would make the players feel more emotionally impacted by the ending they get, adding value to the story. So, how would you tell a good story in a game? Well, you'd have to pick a game form and narrative form that work cohesively, reducing the possibility of ludonarrative dissonance. You would also have to be careful about potentially prioritizing gameplay or narrative over the other and try to keep the game balanced. Because of this, you'd have to keep in mind the way cutscenes, should you choose to use them, may impact the quality of the gameplay negatively.